Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Today is Martin Luther King Day. I hope everyone's having a good day on this Monday, January 17th, 2022. I am Solid Blue Sister, and this is My Turn to Talk. Welcome, Frankie. You are number one, and the only crazy lady, you are number two. Welcome. Shannon Lynn Jordan, you are number three. Welcome, everyone. And we're going to get started in just a moment. And we're going to let everyone else just trickle in as they always do. All right. So today, I'm going to be making I'm not sure how this show is going to go because I know this show is probably going to push a couple of buttons, but maybe not. Shannon says, I'm first, haha. Frankie and Crazy Lady got you beat there. But this show, I've been listening to some shows, not just on Podbean, but other shows, and listening to the news and everything that's been going on about these vaccinations and these masks. So I'm not sure how this show is going to go in terms of how heated people may get, whatever. But I am going to make this announcement, and I'm going to make it throughout the show. People who are on my show all the time know I give people the mic. You guys can talk, say your piece, whatever. The only thing that I will say is when people are talking, please do not interrupt. Let them say what they want to say, and then I will come back to you. And if anyone interrupts, I'm just bouncing them off the show. I don't care how, who they are, whatever. I am just going to bounce you for this particular show. And again, as more people come on, I will make this announcement because, again, I'm not sure how this show will go. But I was on a show the other night where literally people were screaming at each other over mask and being vaccinated. And no one heard anything. You didn't even know what was going on because everybody's screaming. And I don't want to have a show where people scream. So having said that, separate but equal, vaccinated and unvaccinated. Should the vaccinated be separated from the unvaccinated? Should there be hospitals and schools for vaccinated and unvaccinated? Should workplaces be separated? Will this quell the fighting and arguments in America and around the globe? Should people do what they want just separately? Now, again, this topic came up just because of everything that's been going on. New mandates are in place in certain places. The new governor of Virginia just went in and just canceled every mask mandate that the previous governor had put in place. I mean, everything is, you can do it here, you can't do it there, but you can do it here, but someone won't let you do it here. I myself, as some of you know, I am fully vaccinated. I got my booster. I wear a mask. I have a digital ID. My son and I were at the dentist last week, and he would not let anyone come in or service you unless you show digital proof that you have been vaccinated and you have been boosted. That is his choice. That's his practice. He can do whatever he wants. So that's what he chooses to do. There are some places here in California where I've gone where, if you wear a mask, they won't let you come in. So it's just gotten to the point where, it's ridiculous on so many levels. And I say ridiculous because in the end, people are going to do whatever they want to do. Either you're going to wear a mask, you're not going to wear a mask. Either you're going to get vaccinated or you aren't. I don't entertain. I haven't entertained since COVID. The only people who have really been in my house have been people who have come in to fix things. But every time they come in, they have a mask. I, for one, do not care to go over someone's house if I know that they're not vaccinated. I don't care, and they will not come in my house. And if I know that, that's my personal home and that's my personal choice. Other people may feel differently, but bottom line for me is I'm not going to knock you if you're vaccinated, if you're not. I'm not going to knock you if you want to wear a mask, if you don't. I just know what I want to do and what's comfortable for me. Having said that, I'm going to open it up. And if you guys want to, say anything or just listen, you are more than welcome. So, Crazy Lady and Shannon, if you want to jump on the mic, Frankie, I will send an invite out to you, but I understand your situation. So, does anyone want to comment on anything that I have just said or didn't say? Crazy Lady, you have the mic. And, and I hope you had a good weekend.
Yeah. Okay. I had to get vaccinated. Well, Ross had to get vaccinated or he would have lost his job. So he said, I'm old, blah, 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 and went for the jab. And I got it because, I live on the property too. And I cried when before they even poked me, I started crying because I felt like, one of my rights was lost, but, the reason why I was, well, I'm still kind of against it is because look, all the, the new cases of that, whatever is all vaccinated people. I don't go out when I'm feeling sick. I don't go outside. I don't contaminate the world, and yeah, but if you want to mask up, you know, um, I, I do because it's mandatory and, but I don't ever, even before the whole COVID thing, I never got like in close a proximity of other people anyway. So that's my opinion and I rest my case.
Okay, I am going to disagree with you on in terms of who is getting COVID. I don't think I think that there's this false narrative out there that the majority of people who are getting sick and getting COVID are people who are vaccinated. I personally think that the majority of people who are in hospitals um, are the unvaccinated. However, I do believe that there are people who are getting sick who are vaccinated. Do I think they're getting as sick? No. I get a flu shot every year. I've gotten one every year for the last, 25 years or so. To me, it is not a big deal. But for, COVID, I think that we're in a situation where you take your kid to kindergarten, they have to have their, measles, mumps, whatever. When polio was out, everybody lined up to get polio shots. I mean, how many of us are old enough to still have that vaccine mark in our left arm? For college, if you're living, in the dorms or what have you, you have to, you know, uh, have your shots. Now it's that MMR, whatever the one for meningitis, I think it is. College kids, they have to have it. So on some levels, it's like, okay, we'll line up and get our kids this, or we'll get this. But then COVID came along, and I think one reason why COVID people are so against it is because it became a political thing. And I think if you were to take politics out, I think if you were to take, Dr. Fauci out, I think, when Dr. Fauci first said, and I think was one of the biggest screw ups, if you're if you're healthy, don't wear a mask. Don't wear a mask because all the healthcare people wear. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're healthy, shouldn't you wear a mask so you don't get sick? Whatever. I think the rollout of the whole thing and what one person was saying this, one person was saying this, and it just got so messed up that this is where we are now. If it had been like any other shot, whatever, I don't think it would have really been a big deal. So, Shannon, I know you are waiting, but I want to go back to Crazy Lady and ask her what she thinks about what I just said.
Uh, yeah, but see, I never got the flu shot either. And my
Okay.
daughter, she got COVID and she said, Mom, I didn't feel good for like 3 days. And I was like, okay, and she's never gotten the shot, so it's like, And I went through all last summer. 45,000 people were camping out here in campground, and I was unvaccinated. I didn't get COVID. So I think I was one of those people that like a natural uh, immunity.
Okay.
I think,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it's I don't know. It's just yeah. I think you're right. I think if they uh, branded it or whatever differently, that it wouldn't have been you know the way it is now.
Okay,
I
and
guess is
you
what I'm
and you
trying to
make a
say.
point. I'm looking at what you just said. You said I had to have insane shots when I was a kid, but that was because of international travel. But once again, you're being mandated to take these shots because you're going overseas. So either way, it's like, you're like, okay, I'll take it because I have to do it. So, Shannon, you have been waiting patiently. So what would you like to say, my friend?
Okay, I do want to say that I'm unvaccinated and I'm proud to be unvaccinated because of what I've known and what I've researched and the people I meet that are fully vaccinated that are still getting COVID and still have died after being fully vaccinated, or they have permanent heart problems, or I cannot get the shot because I've had a heart attack in 2010. And there's no way I'm going to roll the dice with a vaccine that was not long-term researched. I will and refuse. And I do know for a fact they put a chip into the shot. The CEO of Apijet has already said, yes, there is a chip in this vaccine. Oh, but don't worry, the government's not going to use it. It's only to have your medical records on it, which is controlled remotely. And that's a bunch of bull hockey that the government is going to get involved or have a tracker. It'll have all your information, your criminal background, your bank account, everything. And we've heard already a woman in one of the podcasts says she got the shot, then immediately within days had to go to the hospital because she had a metal ball formed into her armpit. A metal ball. That's the nanotechnology. It is magnetic. And what they are using for this nanotechnology for is it's AI nanotechnology. If you are somehow in the future, if they deem you either a match for somebody, possible kidney, possible liver, whatever, it also can be used if you get out of hand, if they think you might be a problem to the government or to sue any hospital, period. They can therefore shut you down, use that nanotechnology and move it to another part of your body and call it and assimilate pain. And you will think that you're having, oh, I need my gallbladder, or oh, I got a pain here. Then they'll say, oh, you need this procedure done. Meanwhile, I mean, this is a big picture plan. This was planned. Fauci is tied to the Wuhan lab. This is not an outbreak. This is a planned thing. And if anybody disagrees with me, that's your fault for not being educated on the subject because I have enough nanotechnology in me already. I don't need any more. And I promise you, this is depopulation on a mass scale. What they put into the food did not work fast enough. When they started running out of resources, and that's what's happening. You look on the shelves, when you order online, you're like, oh, they're out of this, they're out of that. It's the supply chain because they're not giving out. They're preparing for a war, a civil war. And I don't know if that's going to be between the people and the government or the unvaccinated. All I know is they're stockpiling this stuff and they're waiting. This all came about when we started losing resources, when they figured out and did the numbers, the people at the top, that, oh my God, we're going to run out of food at a certain, later on down the line. So there's been bottlenecks in society where they've depopulated. They continuously depopulate, but it's on a mild scale that nobody ever notices. The medical establishment is gone out of its mind. They want to take over. That's why they wanted Ben Carson as president, that's why we have a position for them called the Surgeon General. These hospitals are making $50,000 per COVID death. So they actually have incentive. Even if you die of something else, they'll write that as due to COVID. They get $50,000. They don't care
Sh-
anymore. Anyway, that's all I have to
Shannon,
say about that.
Shannon, let me ask you a question because with everything that you said something to me, and welcome, Pook. You said something to me that was interesting. You said that anyone who disagrees with you, it's their own fault.
That kind of came out
Shouldn't it
wrong. I'm
be
sorry. But
okay?
that came out wrong. And let me restate that. If you don't agree with me, then you can call me at any time and I can show you and prove to you the evidence that I found almost that correlates with what happened to me. This is a plan. It is a definite thing of depopulation. They have to. The world is overpopulated. It is survival of the fittest. And if not, that they figure that the big picture is to save what is it? What's the old saying where to survive you have to?
Survival of the fittest.
It's not just survival of the fittest. Um, it's to save the whole world, to save the world by killing off some to save the rest. Otherwise, everyone would die. There's a saying, an old proverb. I don't know if it's a proverb, whatever, cliche or whatever you call it. But it definitely, they figured out when they started running out of resources, and this was probably about 5 to 8 years ago, that, oh my God, we're not going to have enough food at the rate that we're populating if we don't have a severe reduction in population now. Then the whole
Okay.
world is going to be,
Okay.
civilization will die.
Shannon, I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with everything that you are saying. However, because I still want to ask some other questions about the being vaccinated and unvaccinated. But in terms of the way the world is running out of resources,
Mm-hmm.
I have to look at 40 years ago, people were talking about we need to stop building so many, houses. We need to stop building so many stores. I mean, every time there's an area of land, somebody wants to put up a shopping mall. And where I live, we have more and more, I think I've said this before, we have more and more coyotes that are coming into people's yards, eating, your cats, dogs, whatever. If I walk my dogs, I have to really be careful because we have coyotes that are running around. And then what people want to do is they want to come out, they want to get their guns or whatever they call, animal control, whatever, and they want to kill them. And I'm like, well, why are we killing them when we're building these houses and stuff and we're moving into these places and we're, shopping at these new shopping malls and we're taking away their land. So in terms of resources, yeah, we may be running out of resources, but isn't that our own fault that we are not, that we're, where I live used to be dairy for the most part and farmland, and now it's houses and
Yeah.
shopping malls.
Yes,
So
you're correct.
then, you look at Orange County, which used to be all mostly orange groves, and look at what that is. So I understand what you're saying about the world is overpopulated, but we knew that 40 years ago that if we keep building all of these things, all of that is going to go away. But before I go into that anymore, I want to ask the next question. Should there be hospitals and schools for vaccinated and the unvaccinated? So for all the nurses and doctors that don't want to take the shot, they have a wing of the hospital or another building, building 2, where all the unvaccinated people go, and building 1 is for all the vaccinated people go. Will that help? Will that stop people fighting? That way, when you go into the door, people won't say put your mask on. You go to building 1, you put your mask on. You go to building 2, you don't have to put your mask on. Shannon?
Doesn't that sound a lot like segregation to you?
Okay, yes, but Pook, hold on. Let me send another one over to you. There we go. Okay, and Pook, before I'm going to give you the same thing that I said to everyone else. I don't know, as more people come in. I know I've been on shows where people are like kind of like screaming at each other. All I ask is for this show is no one interrupts. You all know I will let you all talk. Do not interrupt anyone. If you do, I'm automatically bumping you out. So, Shannon, go ahead. You have the mic.
Okay. What?
You asked me about segregation, and I was
Oh,
going to
okay.
bring that up. Yes, it
But
does. But
it
people didn't have a problem with
does
it
kind
before.
of. But yeah, but see, then that, but it is different because it's a contagion. You know, you're dealing with the contagion now, and so instead of just a color of skin, that's what made segregation so bad. But actually, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all because it would stop the panic and the fear of the vaccinated, because even the vaccinated still have a fear of getting COVID because too many people are dying from being fully vaccinated. So,
Okay. I'm sorry, Shannon. Can I interrupt you? And is it okay if I pass the mic over to Pook because he says he only has 7 minutes? Is
sure,
that okay,
sure,
Shannon?
sure, sure.
Okay, Pook.
How are you?
Pook.
Hi, how are
Okay.
you?
All right. Hi.
Hey, real quick, I I understand the question fully, but here's the thing: we're talking about reinventing a wheel, right? To accommodate people that have exercised their right to choice. Okay, and if we do that, then you're going to have an entire team dedicated to the medical care, and then is it going to be covered by insurance, and are they going to have the funds to kind of pull that off? And I think that that's going way down the wrong road. And you're starting to single people out based on what their choice is. And remember, this vaccine is a choice. And I have a very dear friend that's a UVA hospital nurse up in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I talk to her consistently on this whole COVID thing. Her and her two children recently had COVID. They are currently at 38% ICU capacity at UVA Hospital. They're estimating that only 10% of that is any type of respiratory illness related visits. So when we're looking at these numbers and we're all freaking out and we're allowing these numbers to drive our decisions and to drive our thought process, what we're not seeing is the true data that's relative, right? So when we see the numbers now, like CNN, for instance, I bounce between Fox Business and CNN. And CNN is giving us a total death number, right? But they're not telling us, or let's say the testing numbers. So we already know that the numbers, the percentages that we're seeing of the positive test are strictly based on positive cases that have tested. We don't know what those untested cases are.
So,
And
Pooh, but having said that, doesn't it make sense then? And again, I'm just throwing this out here and not something that I'm, believing 100%. Does it make sense then to put unvaccinated in one building, in a hospital, the vaccinated in another, and just see for 1 month to see what happens to the unvaccinated, what happens to the people who are?
but the spreading is not taking place in the hospitals, it's taking place in their homes and in
True,
public.
true.
So we're, that's the thing is, and when I come back and I'm talking to people that are in the healthcare industry, and I deal with a lot of traveling nurses and all that kind of stuff all the time, where they're putting, and it's just insane what's going on right now with them. But when I'm talking to them, they are not seeing this catastrophic event, you know, creating problems for their healthcare industry. And this goes to Dallas, Texas. It goes to Houston. It goes to Charlottesville, Virginia, and in the backwoods of Roanoke, Virginia. I'm not going to call Roanoke backwoods, but and just outside of Roanoke, it's very similar. And these numbers are escalated that we're seeing. And then I think at some point with this new variant, we know that they can name any type of viral infection that they want to, right? And we're seeing all these different variations, but at the end of the day, COVID 19 was the 19th variant of a respiratory illness of SARS. So none of us had to deal with any of this until it started killing all these people. And I don't disagree that it's a huge issue with killing people because of the respiratory component of this illness, right? And we can argue about it, but I think that looking at starting to segregate and starting to alienate people, and that's one thing that I stand for, is the freedom of choice. But when you start alienating people based on their choice that they've made and they had the freedoms to do that, I think that that too is the wrong road to go down.
Okay. Okay.
And I truly believe in, I believe in the right to choose and all that kind of stuff. But how can we align those and have a parity between the two, right? When we look at those options, well, you know what? You can go to this grocery store because you're unvaccinated. Yes, it's segregating. Yes, it's, you know, discrimination or whatever. But at the end of the day, when we look at the facts, we're exercising our right to choose this vaccine. And when we start impeding on those rights, that's when we start getting in trouble. That's all I have.
Okay. All right. And Pooh, you do make you make a lot of good points. And Shannon, I'm gonna come back to you because Shannon did make a point about isn't that segregation? And I just find it interesting that there are a lot of people, not all, that are talking about our rights, our rights, our rights. But these were the same people who could care less if back in the 50s, 60s, and the first 200 years that people of color, that we were segregated, that there were places that we couldn't go just because of the color of our skin. Now it's like I want my rights. I want my rights because I'm vaccinated or I'm not. Whatever. So yes, Shannon, it is segregation. It most definitely is. Welcome, Crucible Man. So Shannon, you have the mic, and what else would you like to say? And I also would like you to address not only I would like you to address workplaces being separated.
Okay. Well, for one, I think segregation is disgusting. Always have. I didn't grow up that way. I was not taught to be that way. And living here in New Orleans, I mean, we still have buildings that say colored entrance in the back. It makes me sick. I want to throw up. And now, also for the people who are like that, and the South is so bad with this racism crap that now, hopefully, some of these people who are unvaccinated, who are racist of any kind, I hope they're feeling every bit of that. I'm sorry, but it's a little payback for those people. But anyway, addressing the other issue, I could take it or leave it. I actually, I do believe it's our body, our choice. I mean, just such as like Roe versus Wade and abortion. But as far as the COVID thing, I do think that if they did that, it would eliminate some panic a little bit. And people, because a lot of people are more germophobic than others, and others a little more freer. And then you get kind of a mob mentality. It's infectious. One person starts to panic, then the other person starts to panic. And then you get the talk, and then you get the rumors. Oh, well, she's sniffling. Oh, and she's that. it's, I mean, and they forget that, yes, everybody has allergies. They forget that oh, people had allergies in the past. People are lactose intolerant, and their nose ran doesn't mean you have COVID. Oh, but nowadays you go anywhere and you take a sniff or sneeze, and it's like, whoa, get away from, it's crazy. So I actually think that actually might possibly be a good semi-solution to people being more comfortable in their work environment.
Well, employers can legally separate vaccinated and unvaccinated people. They can do it by shift and they can do it by floor. They can say that, vaccinated floor 1, unvaccinated floor 2. They can legally do it. But again, it is that thing where you are segregating people, and will some people feel like, well, I'm on floor one, because the unvaccinated, they don't want to be around me, or I'm on floor two because I'm unvaccinated. I mean, yes, it is, but at the same time, will it stop people fighting? If you know that you're going to go to floor one and you're around everybody who thinks like you'll go through your whole day, no issues, no fights, no arguments.
Yeah.
If you're on floor two for the same thing, I mean, will that help the arguments across the globe?
I think it would, because it would make it, even if it's a wrong way of thinking, people might feel a little more comfortable. Especially like with the vaccinated, they would feel like, well, you're not vaccinated, so and I can still get it. And it's, I know it sounds like segregation, but it's segregation with the contagious virus. So the segregation is moot point. The point is to try to get as less COVID infections as possible. So, I mean, work still has to go on. We can't stop work because of this. So we have to figure out solutions to where people feel more comfortable going back to work. But I'll give you a prime example. I just got all new appliances. It took 3 weeks for them to come and install it. You know why? Because everyone was doing double duty, and they told me, no one wants to work anymore. We don't have any employees. It's like it took that long because they didn't even have the time to install it when they delivered it. So, I mean, it's like nobody wants to work. Walmart is half full. I mean, it's crazy. Nobody wants to work anymore. They're afraid. So they do have to come up.
You're saying afraid of because of the virus, or
so they can feel comfortable by going in. Yeah. Yes.
So,
yes.
So Shannon,
yes, that's what I was told.
You
from
said
Lowe's,
that you don't.
From the delivery guy. Something they don't want to work,
you are
but they're
breaking
afraid
up
of
a little
contracting.
bit.
Go back. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Hello? Okay. I think my hand was over it.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay,
but
so Shannon, let me ask, do you wear a mask when you go out?
everywhere I go, yes. I never leave home without it. I never get into an Uber. I constantly.
Okay.
Definitely. I never go anywhere without it. And now, since they're finding out that these masks, I've even stepped up to double mask. And now they said it's not, you can't. At first, when it came out, it said the COVID can last 17 days on a surface. Then they went back down to, oh, you can't get it by touch. It's just airborne. But if it's airborne, it can stay on a surface. So I've now stepped up to where wearing gloves. I don't care if it looks ridiculous. I don't care. I'm not going to get this thing.
Shannon, you are definitely a sister from another mother, because I wear gloves all the time and people laugh at me, whatever. But yeah, so
I don't care.
Yeah, so but I will say I was wearing gloves before COVID, because like I said, people are just nasty. But I was wearing gloves. Yes, I was wearing gloves before COVID. So I am going to go to Crucible Man. Crucible Man, what would you like to say? And welcome.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm coming in a little bit late, so if I'm covering old ground, just tell me. I did pick up on the segregation comments, and I do agree that it is segregation. I would be more in favor of supporting something like that. I think that's a fairly drastic step, because it does have the potential to pit people against one another and to stigmatize people who are unvaccinated. And I think that's a very slippery slope. What we tend to do in our society, unfortunately, is we go to solve one problem and we create four more. So if the science was truly settled, and the fact that they're telling us 2 years in that the cloth masks don't work, and now we have to start using these N95 ones, should be all the proof we need. I mean, it was like a year ago, Fauci was saying he recommended no masks. And then about 6 months later, he said you should probably wear 2 or 3. So we're dividing our country over very specious scientific evidence that says anybody who's unvaccinated is safe. We all know that's not true. People who are vaccinated get sick all the time. Now, their symptoms might be mild. They may not die, but they get COVID when they're vaccinated. So we're we're jumping through all of these hoops and separating people on the basis of vaccination status when we aren't even sure what the heck we're talking about. So I might be willing to try it for a month and see if that actually, gets us anywhere. But more division is not what this country needs.
And once again, I go back and say, when people talk about how it's divisive and whatever, but I have to go back to segregation. Apparently, it was fine first for a certain group of people when, people of color were segregated, back in the, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and some places, that is still going on. So
But that doesn't make it
and
okay.
no, it doesn't. But what I'm saying is now all of a sudden, this is where I come back to the same thing. When things happen to other people and it's affecting them where it didn't usually affect them before, and they see the magnitude that it affects them, all of a sudden there's a problem. All of a sudden we don't need to we don't need to make it worse. But where were all those people, back when it was affecting a group of people who had no choice, who were basically told, if you don't do this, we're going to shoot you, we are going to kill you? There was no choice. And then now we have places where people who are told to wear masks, these people are like getting shot. People are getting shot and killed because they're not vaccinated, they are not wearing masks, whatever. I mean, so, to me, that's like being hypocritical. So I'm just saying that there is a parallel. It may not be right, but again, when things start to affect people where it never affected them before, and it's like, well, damn, well, shit, my rights are being taken away. Well, guess what? Our rights, were taken away. So there is a parallel there. So my next question, and Crazy Lady, you can answer this one. I know you want to say something, and I also would like for you to answer. What do you think will separating people stop some of the fighting if everyone is in their own little group and happy with their own little group? I mean, what do you think, and what do you have to say? And Bahram, welcome.
All I have to say is, can I see your papers? Okay, that it is okay. Check it out. Let's look back through history. Okay, with the Jewish population and the whole Adolf Hitler thing. Okay, it didn't start off, Hi Hitler at the beginning. Okay, it started off with propaganda, and then the small little separation things. It's not right. And last time I wasn't, well, I can't say that because I say we live in a corporate fascist America anyway. But, it's just, when you start segregating vaccinated, unvaccinated, can I see your papers, please? That's what comes to mind. And just, we're not, like I said, I cried when I took the vaccination. I even put down on the bottom the whole disclaimer thing. I said, not forcefully, but under extreme protest. And then I signed my name. The nurse just looked at me and she says, why'd you have to put that? I says, because it's the truth. And I cried. I cried because I felt like,
I think it's
I was living in
So you and Ross only have the first round. You don't have you haven't gotten your second shot yet.
I just went for the J&J. The one dab will do you, because Ross doesn't like needles, and getting him in there for the one jab was paramount, right? And I just wanted the one jab because, the lesser of all.
Okay, all right. So, Crazy Lady, I'm going to ask you, what do you think about separating people in terms of workplaces and stuff? Do you think that would stop some of the fighting that's going on or around the globe?
Can I see your papers, please?
Okay. All right. That's your answer. Okay. I'm going to go back around to Shannon. What do you want to add?
When would it stop? That would be my question. Is when would it? Once we started it, when would it stop? You've already lowered your standards and allowed it to begin with. When would it stop? That'd be my main question. When would it stop?
Okay. All right. Shannon?
What is the question?
The question is again, will separating people, and I know, we did talk about this, will it stop some of the fighting that's going around? I mean, will it just stop people? If I know that when my child goes to school, he's going to be with Mrs. Smith because Mrs. Smith does not want to get vaccinated, and she'll have the class with all the unvaccinated kids. Or you go with Mrs. Jones, who is vaccinated, and her class will be all of the children who are vaccinated. Will that stop parents from fighting and arguing and going to school board meetings and getting upset and whatever? Will that stop the fighting if people are just, you go over here and I go over here, if they're going to school?
Well, I really love the things that Crucible Man had to say. Like when you create a solution, then 5 more other problems surface. That is true. But right now, this COVID is ruining our economy. And when the economy is ruined, it ruins everybody's lives. We have to figure out a solution that will make these people feel more comfortable going back to work. And if one of those is it, I mean, if you got to deal with the little flack of, the infighting of the vaccinated and unvaccinated and them snooting down their nose, so be it. You got to feed your family. You have to provide taxes into this country. Therefore, it's like a well-oiled machine. That is priority 1, is getting people back to work. It doesn't matter who's fighting what. And, you're pinning sides against each other. But that's what people are doing, including myself, because if I didn't have a pre-existing condition, I most likely definitely would have gotten vaccinated. But like I said, I'm not going to roll that dice with my life. And, but we have to come up with some kind of solution so our economy gets back on track. That's the most important thing. Because if the government collapses, we collapse.
Well, Shannon, I do think that you are right, but I think, I've said this before and some people agree with me, some people don't. But when COVID first started, it became a political matter on both sides, and both sides are wrong. You can blame one side more than the other, but it immediately became political. I think that if COVID had not been political, not just here in America, but across the globe, we would be seeing things would be a lot different and probably a lot better. I'm going to go to Bahram. He just started. And again, I want to announce again, because people are coming on, if you interrupt anyone while they're talking or just popping in and saying something, I will immediately bounce you out. I don't care who you are. Okay. Bahram, what would you like to say?
Well, I mean, on your question about separating people, my view has always been that my health doesn't trump your health doesn't trump mine. So let the people who are willing to go back to work and willing to live their normal lives do that. And if the people who are scared and they're taking their shots and they still feel scared, then that's on them. That's my view. I don't think that I should have my freedoms taken away in any way because of someone else's fear. So that's where I stand on that.
Okay, so Bahram, let me ask this. Do you think that separating people, if you go to the hospital, the unvaccinated people go with the unvaccinated doctors and nurses, and vaccinated people go with the vaccinated people, the same for your workplaces, do you think that would stop some of the arguments?
As long as freedoms aren't removed, then I don't see a problem with that. I'm sure there is that I can't think of right now, but it doesn't sound too good. I don't like the way that sounds, like having separate lines for different types of people. And I mean, there are people who can't get the shots, and they are probably going to be in that unvaccinated line. And I was going to put this to you actually when I first saw the headline of the show. My latest podcast was on the Tuskegee experiment, and I learned all about that and published it on Sunday night there. And I don't know how you feel about like the Tuskegee experiment being that the people of color were experimented on by the CDC and the American government. And a lot of the people that are unvaccinated now in America are people of color. And they are being, ostracized and having their freedoms taken away. And it's all because they have an untrust for they don't have any trust for healthcare in America after that, and quite rightly so. So I don't know where you stand or where a lot of people stand that are on the left, or I don't. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because someone brought up to me the other day that a lot of the people who were unvaccinated in this country are people of color, and I know one reason that is because of the fact that they don't trust the government. And the Tuskegee experiment is just one of thousands of experiments that have happened with people of color over the last 200 years. And when the vaccines first came out, I mean, I had to think. It was like, is this another, thing where, we're going to be the first ones. What are they going to do to us? Are we going to get cancer, whatever? I had to think about it. And when the vaccines first came out, it took me a couple of months before I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But Bahram, that is something that I did think of, and I know that one thing that keeps people of color from getting the vaccine is because of the experiments that have gone on, by our government. I mean, Agent Orange. When Agent Orange first came out, it was, it was experimented on with African American soldiers first. So that is a concern. So yeah. Bahram?
Yeah, it was just to ask that question. I look into this stuff on a daily basis. I have my own conspiracy show, and as much as I've not really looked into, the ingredients, and I know there's a lot of people that believe that the ingredients are harmful, and that is what COVID is. It's either killing people off or giving people diseases, but I don't really subscribe to that view, whether it is that or it's just a control mechanism. Someone sent me a really good meme today of someone with their arm out, and there was about 10 injections in this arm, and each one had a name like Omicron, and they just started making up names, and it was basically saying that your freedom is now on a subscription status where there's going to be new variants all the time, and they can just come out and say, because there's a new variant, your last vaccine doesn't work anymore, so you're going to need to get another one. And it's going to be endless. And if that is the case, which I believe we've already seen with Omicron, they came out and said that. So it's like, where do we all draw the line? There's never been a vaccine before in the history that's ever lasted the amount of deaths that these have caused. Usually vaccines are stopped. I think it was the SARS virus, SARS vaccine. It killed about 15 people, and they pulled it from the market. And this one has surpassed that by a long shot, and it's still going. So what I'm trying to say there is, yes, it might be a small number. I don't know the number, but where there's risk, there always has to be choice. And to take someone's freedom away for that choice is not a good thing. And like the crazy lady said, you just need to look at history and say that to give the government that much power, it never ends well. So even people who are vaccinated, I believe that we should all be stood side by side, whether you're vaccinated or not.
Okay, well said. Crazy lady, I do believe you wanted to say something. Crazy lady, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. All right. Crucible Man?
Well, to go back real quickly to what Shannon said about the economy, I agree with that in a limited way. And the reason I say that is if anybody recalls, and there's been so many relief packages passed in the last couple of years, unrelated to COVID, some of them related to COVID, but the ones that were related to COVID, and I know this because the Chicago Teachers Union was on strike again last week, and what they were complaining about was working conditions. And what the mayor finally reminded them of was, and this goes for probably almost every single workplace in the country, is we in that bill, one of those bills that passed 6 or 8 months ago, there was billions and billions with a B in that bill to safeguard the workplaces. And that was supposed to be spent, and all this work was supposed to be done, and it's been done. And yet we have people who are still, quote unquote, unhappy with the working conditions. Well, what we've done here is we've weaponized COVID. We've politicized it and we've weaponized it. And by dividing people more on this basis, you're further weaponizing it. And what I mean by weaponizing it is there are people who are not happy with their working conditions, with their hours, with their boss, with their salary, with their time off. The list goes on and on and on. And now they finally have a wedge issue, which is COVID, that they can wield in the workplace to negotiate better terms for their employment. And so I think there's a lot of people, and I think Shannon's point is a legitimate one. The economy has been hurt. But is it hurt because of COVID, the disease, or is it hurt because of COVID, the weaponized political football that people are now using to hide behind or give them cover for negotiating tactics that they never had available to them before? So people forget about all the money that was set aside to safeguard the workplaces, and yet people still don't go back to work. Something else is in play.
Okay, Crucible Man, you make some valid points. I just want to go back to some of the comments. Let's see, Frankie, thank you for your super chat. And she says everyone has valid points. COVID was politicized from day one. SWR says, I don't care, not sure what the I don't care, whatever. So what is about what he's referring to or she's referring to. Shannon says before day one, it was planned. SWR says that's cool. I don't know what you're referring to. Yeah, again, I say if when COVID came out and we knew that it was here, if it had been talked about, I mean, it was politicized from day one. And in terms of people going back to work, I think one thing that people did with COVID, like someone said on, that people are starting, businesses from their basement. I think that when everyone was at home for a year, that people were, they learned to reinvent themselves, that the people who didn't want to go back to their minimum wage job, or they had a job where they didn't like their boss or whatever, that COVID gave them an opportunity because they were at home to reinvent themselves and to, come up with their own business and whatever. So I don't think that I don't think that everyone is staying at home because they don't want to work or they're using COVID as, as a reason to stay home. I think people are staying home because they figured out that, what, I can do something other than what I was doing. Or I don't have to go back to work in that restaurant because every time I go back, work in a restaurant, the customers are rude. My boss is rude. I'm just making, $8, $9, $10 an hour. So yeah, I know there was a lot of money that was given to a lot of states, red and blue, where they mismanaged the money. So it's not just one particular place, whatever. Money, when you give money to people, is going to be mismanaged unless you pay for everything directly. So I think in terms of people not going back to work, I think there's a lot that goes into it, not just I'm using COVID as an excuse to stay home. I think a lot of people did invent themselves. So I'm going to go to Shannon. What do you have to say?
What's the question?
I mean, what do you have to say? I mean, you want to add anything to what everyone's been saying? Do you want to add anything else?
I think we kind of were discussing what I already talked about.
No, I mean, I'm just saying from
I
what
do
Crucible
think
Man
a
just
lot
said,
of
what I just said. Do you want to add anything?
I do think because of this, it's been like a mass fear. People are scared, and I do think that has a lot to do with people. For one, a lot of people are sick, and for two, a lot of people are just downright scared. Because they under dramatize, they over dramatize the statistics that are out there and the true going on. I mean, the government knows that people are actually dying from the COVID shot and dying from not receiving it. So it's like people are it's real topsy turvy. So people are confused and scared and with all the fake news, they don't even believe what's really going on. I mean, people just they're in isolation mode, and because they've been in isolation mode, they want to kind of stay that way. It's restructuring the work environment. Working from home is like gone through the roof. Thank God that's what I do for a living. I work from home. But a lot of other people don't have that choice. And it is only because what I see at my local stores and, local hardware stores. I mean, people are like, we don't know what to do. We're so overworked. And then we're getting, it's just caused a huge, chaotic, massive hysteria almost. And that's the problem. Then it's just going to keep growing. And then it's going to be like these businesses are going to go under because they're understaffed. And when that happens, everything, it's like the domino effect. So there has to be a solution. And if it means segregating the unvaccinated and the vaccinated to get down to productive work, which produces money, pays the tax, and gets back into the government to where we can start thriving and being a profitable country again. Because if it's profitable, we profit. It's all one big cycle and a circle. And if the chain, if it's broken, we all suffer. Everybody has to get back. We have to have a solution, because just arguing about it is nothing's getting done.
And you are absolutely right. And SWR says it's been here since biblical times of Moses and Pharaohs. I wonder how they handled it back then. COVID has been here since biblical days. Okay, he's already. I'm not scared. COVID 210. Woot, woot, woot. Oh, you and your woot woots. Get your boosters for 480 million a shot. And Pook says, what productive work. Bahram, I want to ask you a question, because since you're over across the pond in England, do you
Scotland.
see any, I'm sorry, Scotland, do you see any differences between what Scotland is doing and what America is doing in terms of how people are reacting, how the government is handling it? Do you see any similarities or any differences? I mean, what do you see?
There hasn't really been much of a difference up until the last 3, 4, 5 months. We in Scotland, we have a First Minister by the name of Nicola Sturgeon, and Scotland doesn't really have much powers over themselves. We really rely on England. They have the main government, but our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon's trying to probably get a name for herself, and she's becoming like more strict and trying to do things first, to get ahead of the game. So we've had football stadiums and festivals and things that have more than 500 people attending, limited to 500. And the mask mandate came back for a while, and then it got dropped. But the last week or so, I think they've started to admit that the Omicron virus is not serious at all. So I think all the countries in the UK, America, Scotland, Wales, England are all thinking about just dropping everything for a while, because it seems to be subsiding. What I was going to say when Shannon was talking about workplace stuff, just today I came home and I logged on to my Instagram, and here was an article saying that the UK are going to trial a 4-day week And I know that some other countries in the world, I know Finland is one that are already doing that, and a few others. So that's, I mean, I'm happy with that. A 4-day week will be really good, but there is definitely changes coming, and I think the biggest problem that we're going to have is what we've seen throughout the whole of COVID is, and I'm not saying this is why COVID was here, but the elite or whoever runs our world are definitely capitalizing on destroying small businesses and coming in with, you know, the big corporate industries. And we're seeing a lot of the small shops being closed down and even being replaced by Amazon stores here in the UK, which is, it's sad, really sad. But I mean, I've really got no sympathy for small business owners if they're willing to close down their shops for, you know, nothing at all really. In some parts, there's been no cases and things, and they're closing down their businesses that they've, you know, put sweat and tears and all their life savings into to get, and then now they've lost it all. I think it's sad, but I think that's going to be our main problem going forward.
Okay. All right. And Bahram, I think SRWN has a question for you. Why is where is he? Do you have holidays over there?
How do you mean holidays?
I guess he means, do you have holidays? I don't know. I mean, I'm just reading what
uh,
he says. I don't know if he's talking about like Christmas, Thanksgiving. You know, I guess
oh
like, I
yeah,
mean, I know you wouldn't have like a Martin Luther King Day or something, but do you have, you
no,
know, different
we're, we're
different
actually
holidays?
we're actually getting 3 days this year because it's the Queen's. What is it? Is it her birthday or is it her? You know, she's been the Queen for so long. But we're getting an
I think
extra
it's like,
three
is it like
days.
a 100 year or 70 year thing that she's been, like you said,
Yeah,
been the queen for so long or something? Okay.
yeah,
All
yeah. But
right.
we get 30 days holiday a year from our businesses, our employers, and we can take them whenever we want. So if that answers the question, yeah, we get holidays.
Okay, and he just put in here days off. So yeah, it's talking about days
Yeah.
off. Okay. All right. Welcome, Feisty One and Pook. Welcome back. So I'm going to go back to Crucible Man. Do you want to respond to anything that Pook and Shannon said, or anything else that anyone else said?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about what Bahram has mentioned a couple different times, and I agree with him. You know, I don't remember a time in my lifetime, and I'm sort of a history buff, so I do go back a little bit and read things, but I don't ever remember a disease or a virus in our history of our country, and I could be wrong, and if I am, somebody tell me, where 2 years into it, and we have more advanced medicine now than we ever have in any time in human history. We've got more vaccines, we've got more antidotes, we've got more of everything. And what we also unfortunately have is more fear and more manipulation. And in the wrong hands, fear and manipulation are a killer to societies. So at what point do we say enough is enough? We've taken all the precautions. We've got booster shots. We've got vaccines. We've got masks. We're social distancing. If we get to the point where we're having separate buildings for the vaccinated and unvaccinated, at some point, we as a society have done all that we can, and we're going to have to just suck it up and live with it. And like Bahram said, and if you're still afraid, that's on you. We can't let a small percentage of the population dictate to the rest of us. At some point, we have to suck it up and move on. I don't see, because there is going to be another one in a month. There'll be another one in 6 months after that, and so on and so forth. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. But if the government gets it into their heads that there's a way to control us, because they can't control us overtly because we're a free society, but they can do it through these mandates and they can do it through these other microaggressions, or at some point, we're afraid of our own shadows. And at what point do we just say, those of you who are still afraid, stay home. The rest of us are moving on.
Okay. All right. Pook, you are back. You want to say something?
I do. First thing that comes to mind, Crucible, is the last epidemic that we've dealt with on a worldwide scale was AIDS. And I think there was a huge disproportionate opinion about that because in the very beginning, I'm going to say this and I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but they said, oh, it only affects gays, right? So at some point, nobody really cared. But then when this virus of HIV starts going to different countries and killing people, technically killing people, yes, we've advanced medicine, but those type of viruses, and I'm going to call that an epidemic, uh, for a number of reasons, but those have now become historical, right? So nobody's really concerned about that anymore. Nobody really cares about that. And that itself killed more people than this COVID ever has. So I think that there's some parity, or there's some, alignment there in how we view things. And then once we look at the overreach, and I can give you one example of how AIDS directly affected people's, I'm going to say, rights or their freedoms or whatever. But at some point, if you told somebody that you were gay, you could not donate blood. So, and regardless of what the situation was, if you were a perfect match for somebody, they wouldn't let you do it. So they were discriminatory in that practice. But one thing about Shannon, I heard Shannon say something, and I wanted to kind of address that real quick. Her comment is get everybody back to work. And I think the biggest piece of this, for so long, we looked at everybody saying, okay, everybody's on unemployment. They're getting all of this extra money and all of these different things that were happening as a result of COVID because everybody freaked out. But the one thing that nobody really addresses or sees is that this whole COVID process with the payroll protection loans or grants, and a lot of times people misunderstand the difference between the loan and the grant process. And I was part of that. I didn't personally collect any of the PPP money, but the company that I worked for did. And it was one of the contributing factors as to why I left. And they collected, and I can't really disclose the total numbers because I don't know them, but I know for each location they had, it was set up correctly where they were an independent LLC. On average, they collected $1.4 million per location, and they had 64 locations. Okay. And then what they did is, and when they knew they were getting this infusion of cash, this cash basically went to the bottom line of all the equity partners. And they came back and said, okay, we need you to cut everybody's hours under 24 hours to save payroll costs because of this pandemic. While in the meantime, they were getting, millions and millions of dollars in payroll protection money that was a federal crutch. This went straight into the pockets of corporate America. And then we say, well, everybody needs to get back to work. And I think and especially in my industry, in the hospitality industry, the majority of these people that were willing to take salary cuts and willing to do what they needed to do to get by and make things better because they were indebted to their employer, they realized when all this started coming back and the occupancy levels in these hotels were increasing to a pre-pandemic level, and they said, hey, you know what, we're busier, we can hire people now. And they say, no, because we're not ready to hire people because you guys are doing a good job. And then those same people came back and said, well, my salary was cut and we kind of need to talk about that to go back to that level. And they said, if you don't like it, go find another job. And a lot of these people in the hospitality sector, regardless of whether it was restaurants, hotels, or anything to do with hospitality, which was the biggest hit industry worldwide, they chose to go and do their own thing. So the pool of people that are willing to do these jobs and be abused at these jobs just aren't there. And a lot of these people have made the decision to change industries. And I think that this was a long-term pressure cooker, and this was the trigger that released all that pressure. And you could actually see who they really were as far as a company and how much they really cared, because at the end of the day they didn't, but they participated in the biggest heist of American history with all this federal funding program that went out. And these people pocketed millions and hundreds of millions of dollars off of this. But we're not blaming these companies. We want to complain about inflation, but at the same time, we want to say, we need good paying jobs. Well, good paying jobs comes with inflation because those cost of goods and services are going to be at a higher rate to cover the payroll expense. Why are we putting that burden on the individual business owner? It makes no sense to have both ideals. I don't know if anybody disagrees, but that's just kind of where I'm at.
All right, Pook, I think that you have brought up a lot of good points. And before you came back on, I did say that there are people who are, who COVID was a reason for them when they stay home for so long. COVID was a reason for them to reinvent themselves. So everyone is not staying home just because, they don't want to work. They've just reinvented themselves. Um, you know, we're at a situation where our economy, whenever you go through something like this, the economy is going to suffer. I don't care who's in the White House. The economy is going to suffer. Whether it's somebody in the Red House that's red, whether they're blue, whether they're gray, purple, whatever, the economy is going to suffer. But if people don't want to work, and I don't think everyone's using COVID as a reason. I think a lot of people are not working because literally, they're saying to themselves, I don't need to work. I mean, you have a lot of truck drivers who, they quit their jobs because they were not making enough money, that they're, hauling goods from point A to point B across the country. And they're, they have a deadline that they're supposed to meet, and they can't sleep. Yet they get into an accident, and then they're, sentenced to 100 years in jail. Is it worth it? So while we're complaining about all these people not working, why don't you do it? Why don't you be the person that, steps, steps up? But a lot of people don't want to do that. We will bloviate all we want to, but no one wants to step up and actually do the job. So what are we going to do? What do we need to do to get people to go down to the docks to unload those canisters that are full of goods? What are we going to do to get people to go to Walmart to put, stuff on, to put products back on the shelf? What are we going to do besides complain? So, I'm going to go to Shannon.
Give them all hazmat suits. Whatever it takes so they don't have that fear.
But is it just COVID now? Because now we're into a whole different subject. We're now talking about people who are not working. Is it COVID, or is it the fact that people have found that there's they can do something different where they don't have to go to work? Or is it where I've been doing this shit job for so long with no pay, I can barely pay my rent or my mortgage. My kid hasn't had new shoes in a year. What do we do, Shannon?
Well, you can't say they're not coming to work because of the stimulus packages, because $3,200, I'm sorry, over a period, it's just not enough to sustain your bills. So I can't help but say, but I think the only solution is to separate them. Tell you the truth. Because if they can't exist without the fear or just it's almost like the Hunger Games, different factions. Except it would
but okay, but Shannon, again, what if it's not being separated over COVID? What if it's just the fact that I am a essential worker working at a grocery store? Most grocery stores here in California will not give you full time because they don't want to pay the benefits. So a lot of people in grocery stores here in California are making part-time, are working part-time. So what are you going to do to those people who says, why should I go and be a grocery store worker where I can't even work full time and get benefits, and I'm getting $10 an hour? What do I do? It has nothing to do with COVID. How do you get those people to go back to work?
Well, they're going to either have to go back to school and learn a new trade or go hungry. Not a whole lot of options there. or the government, which they're trying to steer towards. They say we're a democracy, but we definitely have been a socialist country, now stepping into full-blown communism almost. It's got to do something. And when I say separate what is what she said earlier, Pook. Like in an office building, have the vaccinated on one floor, have the unvaccinated on another, or like say in Walmart, on one shift in a 24-hour period, have the vaccinated work, and on the next day, have the unvaccinated work. You got to find some kind of solution, because we can't just sit here and be in some kind of purgatory, or keep complaining. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then still no decision has been made. Something has to be done. Either start giving the American public enough to survive, and then therefore we definitely become a socialistic country, whether they call it socialism or not. But something has to be done, because people are going out of business. Don't have the business, we can't eat. We don't have delivery drivers, we can't eat. We don't have store grocery workers, we can't buy food. Something has to be done.
And Shannon, you again, you bring up another good point, because socialism is not, when people are complaining about, COVID and mandates and whatever, it's not just about COVID and mandates. When it comes to, at least for me, when it comes to the US, I see other things that are going on that are socialist, that are autocratic, that are, it goes across a lot of things. A lot of people are being affected in terms of their rights. But I want to go to Bahram, and I want to ask you something that that we've been talking about here, that's been going on in the U.S. In Scotland, are there issues where people are just quitting their jobs and they are not working? I mean, what is the job situation like there, and what is the situation like in terms of keeping food on the shelves and things stocked in the stores? Not because it isn't there, but it's the fact that people are not working to take stuff out of the trucks and putting it on the shelves. So what is it like there?
Yeah, that was what I was wondering. I actually don't know how it works in America, but here the government very early on, I think when we went into our first lockdown in April 2020, I think it was, the government stepped in and gave people furlough, which was they would pay 80% of your weekly wage, and give your employer the option, if they wanted to top it up to 100%, that was up to them. And that allowed employers to let a lot of their workers go home. And like I was one of those, I had to go home. I was in the house for 3 or 4 months getting 80% of my wages. And then eventually I was paid off, because a lot of companies were, feeling it tight, and they couldn't manage. But what you were talking to Shannon about, I was screaming out. It's all pushed into universal credits. I think that is what this whole thing is about. But when you're talking about the demand for workers and there's a need for workers, that surprises me, because surely then the power would be in the people's hands for a change, because that's been one of my biggest passions, is complaining about how employment is in the UK, where agencies and all the power is in the employer's hand, and they can pay us so low wages. So I think the turn was always going to come where the power is now in the people's hands, and we can now demand higher wages. But maybe this is what it's all about, is instead of us having the power, the government again are going to come back and say, well, it's either if you don't want to work, you can be on universal credits, which they'll make a way for it to be more beneficial to stay at home and earn these universal credits rather than go to work. And that's just, that's the way I see it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Crucible Man?
Yeah, I think relative to people not going back to work, and Shannon probably hit on it. You at some point you've got a decision to make, and most people will tolerate certain circumstances until they're intolerable. And when they can't make their rent payment or they can't pay their cell phone bill, then they will go back to work. So I'm at the point where, in the meantime, employers, unfortunately, I don't want this to sound overly draconian because I am sensitive to the unique circumstances of COVID, but in a capitalistic society, it's survival of the fittest for businesses, and businesses go out of business by the dozens and the hundreds every day for all kinds of different reasons. And I'm not trying to hide behind that, but at some point, employees are the same way. If they can get by without working somehow and pay their bills and live a satisfying life, then God bless them. But at some point, most people, after they get done stomping their feet and blowing off steam and complaining about all these things, at some point, there's bills to be paid. There's children to be taken care of. There's food to be put on the table. And I think employers, from everything that I've read, and I'm not saying all employers, but they've been very generous with wage increases, time off, bonuses, signing bonuses, things like that, crazy amounts of money for jobs that ordinarily wouldn't attract that kind of compensation. So I think the employers have done their part to not only create safe workplaces, but to create financial and workplace incentives to come back. At the end of the day, we're a free society. You can't twist anybody's arm. And beyond improving the working conditions and the pay for some of these jobs, I think some of these employees are going to get a rude awakening.
Okay, I'm going to go to Poop next, but Crucible Man, I want to ask you a question. In terms of, you think that employers have done their job, do you think they've done their job for essential workers?
What would be your definition of an essential worker?
Someone who is cleaning an office building, someone who is, coming at night and they're cleaning the bathrooms, the toilets, the people who are working in the grocery stores, the people who are working at Target and Walmart and all these other places that are usually retail, where they're making minimum wage and they're not making enough money to put food on the table, what have you. So all the things that these employers are doing, are they doing it for new employees that are coming on, or what are they doing to help the people that are there? And I don't mean that we're going to give you masks and we're going to, open up a window, or we're going to create this or whatever. I mean, are they doing that for essential workers? Because essential workers, even before COVID, people would look at people would look down on people who were making minimum wage, and they were pretty much shit on. And I think, come on. When I go to the market, I'm one of those people where I don't just put my cart, I just don't move my cart and just put it over to the side. I don't care how far I am from the cart return. I will either take it all the way back to the store, or I'll put it into the cart return, because I see these kids and sometimes these adults hustling, taking these carts back to the store. And I have been around people who will take a cart and they'll just put it to the side, whatever, and it's not a big deal. I'm talking about them. So when you say that these employers have done their job, have they really? Crucible Man?
Unfortunately, that group that you speak of, the essential workers, they unfortunately have been invisible in our society for a very long time now. So without working in those workplaces and those conditions, obviously I can't answer that. But my hunch would be that they're giving these incentives and these better conditions and things to the newer employees to attract them. I think if you were an existing employee and you went into your boss's office and you complained, would you get the same thing? But it's like, you watch television and you see these cell phone commercials and they're offering all these great deals to new customers. They hardly ever offer the same thing to existing employees or existing customers. It's unique anyway. So no, to answer your question, I don't think they're treating them fairly. But put it on the list of things that these guys get treated unfairly about. They're at the lower rungs of society. They're invisible. We don't even notice them bagging our groceries. And I'm not trying to get into a class warfare discussion here, but that group has been neglected for a very, very long time. And so I would not at all be surprised if they also, got the short end of it with COVID as well.
Okay. All right. Poop.
may disagree with part of that. And I personally don't believe it's the employer's responsibility to do more. I think it should be left to the individual. Now, keep in mind, there are some brand standards and some store policies and those kind of things. And the reason why these employers or companies are doing this is to protect the integrity of their liability, right? So, but at the end of the day, I don't think that it's necessarily the employer's responsibility to do more, because what are we doing more for? Are we trying to minimize the spread rate of a viral infection that gets to the, I don't know, let's just call it what it is when you do the math and you're analytical about it. It's 1/1000 of 1%. So what when we're looking at this, why is it up to the employer to perform or do more when the actual employee, or what I would call an associate, has their own responsibility to do whatever they need to do to protect themselves? I don't know why we're trying to put this on the employer.
Okay. All right. Okay. Everyone has had some really good points. I agree with some of them. I disagree with some. But I think everyone has had some really good points. So I'm going to go around the room and everyone can give their last thoughts, starting with Shannon. What do you have to say or add?
I say be who you are and stand up for the rights to have whatever you want done to your body. Don't let anybody tell you different. Don't be manipulated. And,
Okay, Shannon, your hand is over your mic. You're not
oh,
coming in
sorry.
clearly.
You have the right to choose what goes into your body, even if it's made into law. I will refuse. They would have to drag me out by my hands and feet. And believe me, I would rather die on my own accord than to die because of something the government told me that I had to do. So that's just all I have to say. I don't believe it's right what they're doing. They know that this is killing people without the shot and with the shot. So, but my best way is to just protect myself and just try to abide by the COVID protocols, and that's about it.
Okay. Crucible Man?
Yeah, I guess, we all in life, we all have to pick our battles. We can't go to the mat for everything. I personally am not a flu shot or a vaccine person or a prescription person or a medicine person. I never have been. And I was originally not going to get the vaccine because of what I just said. But I thought, that's not really a hill I want to die on, figuratively speaking. So I went and got the shot, and I'm going to get a booster in a couple of days. Do I completely believe in any of the science? No, I don't. But again, I'm picking my battles. And I think at some point, I agree with Shannon, you have to be an individual and you have to, stick up for what you think are your rights. But at the same time, I was giving my sleeves out of my vest, is an expression. I wasn't giving up anything to continue to participate in society. So I didn't feel it was a hill I wanted to die on. So pick your battles, stick to your guns, but everything is not worth going to the mat for.
Okay. Bahram?
The only advice I usually give is your health is your responsibility, and if the best advice I can give is don't rely on these so-called experts for what what you believe is right, because when you rely on people like Fauci and Gates and these people, it's you're never going to get clarity. So when it comes to masks, when it comes to the shots, you do the research, you look into what's best. Even with these thin masks that are the standard, if you believe you need two or more, it's on you. So I always tell everyone, look into it. Don't just take what comes out of the TV as fact, because the government can be wrong, science can be wrong, as we've seen in the past. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And Pook, hold on, Pook, I'm sorry, before I go to you, Mimi, we are actually wrapping up the show, and Pook and Shannon, thank you very much for the pod beans. Bahram, I wanted to ask you before I go to Pook, in Scotland, do they have someone like a Dr. Fauci or something like the CDC who decides what's what?
Yeah, he's it's Chris Whitty is our one, but we kind of really just we all throughout time, regardless whether it's COVID or anything else, we kind of look towards America and we kind of follow suit. We're like America's puppy. We just follow America and what they do. So I'm more familiar with your guys' stuff. I'm very up to date with, like, since Donald Trump became president, I've kind of followed your guys' stuff for 5 or 6 years, and because the UK is quite boring compared to America. There's a lot that seems to go on there, and your media is like, I feel sorry for you with your media, because that must be tough to live with. Fox and CNN. It's just no wonder there's so much infighting and division.
Okay, and Pook, I am going to come to you. I just have one more question for Bahram, because it fascinates me with things that go on in another part of the world. So Bahram, when we have CNN, we have Fox, we have MSNBC. I mean, we have so many different news shows. How many does Scotland have? Like, do you have a lot that are on the left? Do you have a lot that are on the right? I mean, what do you think?
We our main one's the BBC. I'm sure you've heard of them. I think they are in
Yes.
America as well. They're our main one, and they're probably like 90% of all news. And then you've got another channel, ITV News, which is more like regional stuff. But the BBC are the main one, and probably the majority, or maybe Sky News. But obviously, not everyone has Sky. I think everyone has the BBC channel built into their television. So I think it's that one is the overriding one.
Okay.
And
Well,
and
Bahram,
they do lean left. They do lean left.
they do lean left. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Bahram, I will make a point now that I know that your show is not live, that they are pre-recorded. I will make a point, and I will listen to your shows. I absolutely promise that I will. And if you ever do a live show, let people know when you're going to do it, because I would love to be on one of your live shows.
Will do.
Poot, thank you for waiting so patiently. What is your last word?
I think I have a last thought. I live by the principle of always make a difference in what happens tomorrow, and don't dwell on what happened yesterday, because we can't change it, right? So it's irrelevant what happened yesterday or a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. We need to look at tomorrow and make sure that we're making the changes to affect us personally, and possibly somebody else, and do something that's going to make that defining difference. I mean, that's just, I always come back to that. I can't change what happened yesterday. It's irrelevant. Why even talk about it? It's off the plate. So I don't know.
Okay. You guys have, okay. I know I said I was giving you guys the last word, but all of you have just said something that made me think of something. And and my show never usually, my show is supposed to be an hour, and I'm already past an hour and a half, and I refuse to go to 2 hours, and Revolutionary Bro has showed up. So I have one last question for you guys. Why do you think that with the vaccines for COVID, for the flu shot, for SARS, for polio, for mumps, measles, for all these other things, why do you think that we technically do not have a vaccine or cure for cancer or AIDS? And I know I'm opening up a whole new can of worms, and I'm trying to end the show. Pook, you want to
It's
answer
the
that one?
money. It's the money. It's the
So,
money that
so you're
makes
saying that the
these.
money that the government will not get if they have a cure, or
No, it's the money that these medical facilities, the doctors, the pharmaceutical companies, the banks, the stockholders, everybody that is banking on these principles, they don't want to see this. I went through a cancer loss in my own family, and I watched specific things happen. And a lot of times we see people that are diagnosed with cancer, and you have this long term treatment plan that's extremely outrageous. I mean, it's extreme in the amount of money that it costs to treat and how all that plays out. And I think that the reason why we don't see those vaccines or the cures or whatever the case may be is that it's too much of a part of it's too much involved in our economies to make that happen.
Okay. Shannon, you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am. He is absolutely hit the nail on the head. It is, if they cured everyone, there would be they would be out of business completely. Big pharma would be out of business, and you know how big pharma is. It's all about the almighty dollar. I That's all I have to say. He's right. Correct.
Okay. Crucible?
Yes, I would have to agree with both Shannon and Pook. I think money is at the root of most of this, and certainly when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, nobody's going to cry for those guys. But I also think, and I'm not an expert in this area whatsoever, but just from what I read, in they do experiments on mice and laboratory rats and things. And I think what a lot of times frequently happens is they find a promising cure for something, and it turns out that it either has really serious side effects, it damages organs, in proximity to the area you're trying to treat. It's ridiculously expensive. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why we haven't come up with a cure, but anybody who wants to start with MONEY would not be going wrong.
Okay. And Bahram, I swear this is the last word.
Yeah. I actually have some. I think you guys are all right. Money is probably the main reason, but there's actually another reason I believe, and it's they need depopulation. They openly talk about the world having too much people in it, and it saddens me that so many people that I know, friends, family, believe in this as well. That there's too many people. My nanny, my grandma, she just said to me not long ago, you see, we're not having wars anymore, Ian. There's a lot of people in the world, and people sadly have to die. And it sickens me when I see quotes like our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. He openly quoted, and I've got the quote because I posted it on my Instagram just 2 days ago. This is a direct quote from him. The world's population is now 6.7 billion, roughly double what it was when I was born. If I live to be in my mid-80s, then it will have trebled in my lifetime. I simply cannot understand why no one discusses this impending calamity, and why no world statesmen have the guts to treat the issue with the seriousness it deserves. We seem to have given up on population control. And that was Boris Johnson in 2007. So, you'll find quotes like that from Bill Gates, from Rockefeller. And, if they was to cure cancer, the population would go up again. But it's not a problem, guys. There's enough for everyone to go around. I think one of the amazing facts that I heard was that everybody in this world right now can fit into the state of Texas. So that just shows you how big our world is. And there's enough fields and things to go around to grow us food. So these people are just evil to the core, and don't buy into it.
Okay. Pook. And I just copied and pasted your link. So what do you have to say? You are absolutely the last one.
That's fine. I don't know if anybody has seen that. I think she was asked not to come back to the UK for a while after her performance. But the story that she tells in that video is heartbreaking. And I think if you look back at historical events like that, or historical displays of what she did there, it really kind of brings you into today, and it says, okay, what's really going on? And specifically with the HIV. And you can relate it to cancer and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's about a responsibility of ourselves to make sure we're doing whatever we can to keep ourselves healthy and to make sure that we're making a difference in our own lives and not wait for anybody else to tell us what we need to do or what we have to do.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I am finally going to end the show. We are at 1 hour and 39, almost 40 minutes now. So I am going to end the show. So thank you everybody for coming. And everyone has some really, really good points. Mimi and Revolutionary Bro, y'all were late. Y'all were late, 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 late. So but again, thank you guys for coming on, and everyone did have great points. The unvaccinated and the vaccinated. Everyone, again, I just say everyone's going to do whatever they want to do. Do what's best for you. Don't harass anyone because they're not doing what you're doing, whatever. Just live your own life, live the life that you feel that is best for you. That life for me is being vaccinated, and I try to keep a distance from people. And if you choose not to vaccinate, more power to you. So on that note, there will be no show tomorrow. Unfortunately, I have some things I need to take care of, but there will be a show on Wednesday and Thursday. So I hope you guys have a good afternoon. Have a good day tomorrow. Speak your truth. Go where the wind takes you. I'm Solid Blue Sister, and I will see you on Wednesday. Pook, thank you so much for the pod being, and Bahram, I promise I am going to check out your show. And thank you for liking my show. And Bahram, I really hope you do a live show because I think you will get a lot of people who want to join. Crucible Man, thank you for the pod being. So Frankie, everyone else, thank you so much. I will see you on Wednesday. Bye.
And entertain your own damn self.
Shannon, you and that entertain your own damn self. And bro, okay, you just woke up. All right, I know you work a lot, so I'm going to give you that pass. Mimi, I'm not sure what your pass is. What is your pass today? Why were you late? Oh boy. But everyone, seriously, thank you. And Feisty One, I know you're at work. And Frankie, as always, thank you.
Mimi, I'm on a hiatus right now until I get the website done. So my show will be probably in about another month or so. But I'm coming back with a new conspiracy show with Saba, a series show.
Wait, so Shannon, you're coming out with another show?
Yeah, I'm going to combine my rock and blues show together as one show, which is on a hiatus right now until I get the website done. We're going to come back in full force, but I'm starting a new conspiracy show with Saba. Do you know Saba from Doomsday?
I know who Saba is. I will say, Shannon, I am disappointed. I would love for you to just have a total blues show. So I am disappointed in that.
What?
Okay, you said that you were going to combine your blues and your rock show.
Well, the rock and blues, it'll be mainly blues rock. So, but it's I can't do 3 shows.
Well, I will say I am disappointed because I would love you to just do a total blues show because the blues shows that you have done have just totally rocked. So I'm just throwing in my own 5 cents.
They're all gonna rock. It'll be mostly blues. So.
All right, everybody. I'll see you later, and I will see you on Wednesday. All right. Bye.
Bye.